The crystal rim of a champagne flute clicked against gold. Orange cedar candles burned at every table, their wax pooling like honey. And in the center of the Avalon Room on the 47th floor of Hartwell Tower, a young black woman's hand closed around the sleeve of the quiet Korean man standing beside her. 3 women in Cartier watched him the way wolves watch a lamb that has wandered into the wrong field. He did not flinch. Amara Bennett felt his pulse under her fingers, steady, unhurried, almost gentle. She had loved him for 11 months and 17 days, and in that time she had learned that his stillness was never fear. It was something older, something he carried like a name he had not chosen. The women smiled. The orchestra played Debussy. A waiter offered canapés that no one took. In the next 3 hours, none of the 184 people in that ballroom would understand that the man they had decided to humiliate was about to redraw the lives of half of them, and that the woman beside him would be the one who stood up first. Before we go any further, I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your city and the time on your clock, right now, this very moment, in the comments below. I read every one of them, and it matters more than you think to know who's sitting on the other side of this story. If you have ever stood next to someone the world decided to make smaller, stay with me. What happens at this dinner table is going to stay with you long after the music ends. Hit that subscribe button, settle in, and let me tell you what really happened the night the Bennett Gala ended in silence, and what the quiet man on her arm did when she finally let go of his sleeve. 3:47 in the morning. Mount Sinai Pediatric ICU. The hallway lights had dimmed to their soft overnight blue, and the only sounds were the steady rhythm of monitors and the distant scrape of a janitor's cart on the floor below. Amara Bennett unwrapped a cold chicken sandwich at the nurse's station, took 2 bites, and decided that was enough. Hour 14, minute 23, of a 16-hour shift. Inside room 4, behind a glass partition decorated with paper butterflies, a 4-year-old girl named Zoe Adekambi was sleeping on her right side, 3 weeks post-transplant. Her color had finally come back 2 days ago, the rosy brown her mother kept crying about on FaceTime, the color that meant the new kidney was holding. Amara had checked her vitals 9 times that night, and each time the numbers had been a little steadier, a little kinder. You're going to wear a hole through that glass, baby. Geraldine Pierce was 61 years old, a charge nurse in pediatric ICU for 34 of those years, and she walked the way some people prayed, quietly, certainly, without explaining herself. She set a fresh cup of coffee on the counter beside Amara's untouched sandwich. She's stable, Amara said. And you've been standing in that doorway watching her breathe since 2. I just want to be sure. Geraldine took a slow sip of her own coffee and looked at Amara the way an aunt looks at a niece she has decided to keep. Honey, listen, the people in that fancy room tomorrow night, your aunt's people, they'll look at you in your scrubs and decide who you are. They'll look at the man on your arm and decide who he is. Let them. Dignity is the one thing they cannot take if you do not hand it over. You remember that? Amara nodded. She had heard Geraldine say versions of that sentence for 4 years, in 4 different rooms, after 4 different families had been broken by news no parent should ever receive. Tonight it landed differently. Dr. Okafor passed behind them on his pre-dawn rounds, gave Amara a small 2-finger salute, and disappeared down the corridor toward room 7. He had hired her out of nursing school 4 years ago. He had once written, on a recommendation letter she was not supposed to see, she listens to children the way most people listen to symphonies. And she had cried in the parking lot reading it. She clocked out at 6. At 6:12, a matte gray Honda Accord, 2019, dented rear bumper, registration he had renewed twice in her presence, pulled to the curb on Madison Avenue. Ji-hoon Kang did not get out of the car the way wealthy men got out of cars. He simply opened the passenger door from the inside, leaned across, and handed her 2 things, a paper cup of latte with no sugar from the Ethiopian place on 99th and a small lacquered bento box wrapped in a navy furoshiki cloth. Dosarak, he said. Anchovies, rice, the egg the way you like it. Eat before you sleep. How was your night? 3 calls, 2 of them at 4. I'll tell you in the car. She slid in beside him. The seat was warm. He did not ask about her shift. He asked, how is Zoe? She had to look out the window for a second before she could answer. They had been together for 11 months and 17 days. The first time she ever brought him home to her tiny apartment in Astoria, on the 8th night they had known each other, he had walked into her kitchen, seen the photograph of her mother on the windowsill, and stood there for a full minute in silence before saying, she had your hands. In the 2nd month, on a rainy Tuesday in February, sitting across from her at a Korean barbecue place in Murray Hill, he had set his chopsticks down and said something she had thought about almost every week since. Amara, my family is complicated. There are reasons I have not introduced you yet. There will be a time when I can, and I am working toward it. I am asking you to give me that time. I will not lie to you about who I am, but I am also asking you to trust that the parts I have not shown you are not parts I am proud of. She had looked at him for a long moment, then she had picked up her chopsticks again and said, okay. She had never asked again. Not because she did not wonder, because she had decided, that Tuesday, that trust was a thing she was going to give to one man on purpose. Now, 11 months and 3 days later, sitting in his Honda on Madison Avenue, the phone in her purse vibrated. It was 8:04 in the morning. It was her Aunt Vivian. "Sweetheart, tell me you're not still at the hospital." "I just got off, Aunt Vi. The gala is in 72 hours, darling. We need to talk about your dress, your seating, and, please, just listen, whether you really mean to bring that boy." A pause. Amara felt Jihoon's eyes on the side of her face. She did not look at him. "His name is Jihoon, Aunt Vi. I know his name. Damien will be there. The Holloways have been asking after you. There's still time for me to introduce you to him properly, the way your mother would have wanted. I'm bringing Jihoon." Another pause. Longer. "All right, darling. All right. We'll talk about your dress tomorrow." The call ended. Jihoon did not start the engine. "Are you sure?" he said. "I'm sure." He turned in his seat slowly and looked at her in a way that made her want to take his hand and also, strangely, to step back from him. "Before you decide, Amara, or before they decide about me." She did not answer right away. Her hand had risen to the top button of her blouse, an old habit when she was thinking, and her fingers stopped there as if she had forgotten what they were for. She had been a nurse long enough to know that some questions were a kind of diagnosis. They told you what the person asking was actually afraid of. What no one in that small parked car on Madison Avenue knew, in that quiet morning of November, was that in 72 hours the Kang family was about to break a 47-year-old private agreement with a Manhattan family. And the woman who had just answered her aunt with one word would be the reason. 7:32 in the evening. The elevator doors opened onto the 47th floor of Hartwell Tower, and the Avalon Room received them the way old money receives anything it has not yet decided to keep. The ceiling rose 21 feet above their heads. 6 Murano chandeliers hung from it like frozen fireworks. 184 guests in black tie moved between the round tables, and a string quartet on the low riser was playing the second movement of Debussy's quartet, the slow one, the one that always sounded like someone trying not to cry in a beautiful room. Amara had picked her dress out herself. Navy silk, Bloomingdale's, $312 on a card she had paid off in 3 installments. She had refused, twice when Aunt Vivian had offered to loan her something appropriate. Jihoon's tuxedo was charcoal gray, soft shoulders, 3-button cuff. It looked to 90% of the people in that room like a rental from a midtown shop. It was a Brioni, hand-stitched in Penny, Italy 3 months ago. Mr. Choi had insisted, quietly, after the 3rd invitation. In the elevator on the way up, Jihoon had touched her wrist and said one sentence. "Whatever happens tonight, Amara, please remember that I have not asked you to defend me." She had looked at him. Then she had checked her phone. There was a text from Geraldine, sent at 6:18 p.m. Baby. Walk in like a nurse walks into a room full of bad news. Spine straight, hands warm. Eyes on the patient, not the doctors. You know who the patient is. She had smiled at her screen for the first time all day. Now the elevator doors had closed behind them, and Aunt Vivian was crossing the ballroom toward them in a column of bronze satin, her arms already opening, her smile already arranged. "Darling, darling." And Mr. Kang. A pause that was 3 syllables too long. "Welcome." Jihoon bowed slightly. He did not extend his hand. Vivian did not extend hers. The exchange ended before either of them could decide whether it had been one. Come, come, the Holloways are already at the table." Damien Holloway was 32 years old, 6'2", Wharton MBA, senior portfolio manager at Holloway Capital, and his smile when he saw Amara was the smile of a man who believed the night had been arranged for him. Amara. He kissed her cheek. He kissed it the way a cousin kisses a cousin at a wedding everyone has resigned themselves to. Then he turned and, "Sorry, your name was Jihoon? Jaehoon? Got it. Right, of course." Renee Holloway, in emerald, was watching Jihoon's cuffs. She was looking specifically at the buttons. A small frown moved across her mouth and was tucked away again. They sat. The first course came out, a beet carpaccio with smoked yogurt that nobody at the table touched. The 2015 Cabernet was poured. Damien held his glass up to the foundation, to Vivian, and to, what was it again, Jihoon? Jihoon. "Sorry, brother, I'll get it." He did not get it. He missed it a 3rd time 15 minutes later when the duck was served. By then, 2 other tables had noticed the joke. Renee's laugh when it came was the practiced low laugh of women who have learned to wound at dinner the way surgeons learn to cut, precisely, and without leaving a visible scar. Amara felt the pulse rise in her throat. She set her wine glass down. She breathed. She remembered Geraldine. Eyes on the patient, not the doctor's. The patient, she understood now, was not Jihoon. The patient was her own dignity. At 8:14 during the soup course, a waiter named Devon, 22 new, terrified, turned too quickly with a tray of bisque and a half-full bottle of the 2015 Cabernet. The bottle did not fall. The bisque did not spill. But the rim of the bottle clipped Amara's glass, and the wine inside it tipped neatly into her lap. The stain spread across navy silk like a slow continent. The waiter froze. His face went the gray-green color Amaras had seen on residents during their first code blue. He started to say, "Ma'am, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry." And Renee Holloway, without looking up, said, "Oh, sweetheart. Sweetheart. Don't worry, that stain is never coming out of cheap silk anyway." The waiter began to cry, quietly. Standing there with the bottle in his hand, Amara turned to him before she turned to Devon. "It's all right. Please, I work nights. I have been thrown up on by toddlers. This is nothing. Go finish your service. Take a breath. It's all right." The boy nodded twice, mouthed thank you, and left. Jihoon had already moved. He had risen from his chair without a sound, gone to the buffet station, returned with a folded white linen napkin and a small ramekin of club soda. He knelt beside her chair on one knee. He did not speak. He pressed the napkin to the silk with the patience of someone deactivating a fuse, lifting the stain a quarter shade at a time, not trying to remove it. Only trying to make sure she did not have to walk through the room wearing it like a label. The entire table watched him. 2 tables over, an older woman in pearls was watching him too, and Amara saw her say something quietly to her husband that made the husband look at Jihoon a second time. He stood. He folded the napkin once. He placed it on the table. He sat back down beside her, and under the white tablecloth he took her hand and held it. Damien's voice light, amused. "Brother, you don't have to do all that. We have staff." Jihoon looked at him for the first time that evening. He did not smile. "He has a name. His name is Devon. He is 22. He is terrified of losing this job. That is who staff is." A silence at the table. Vivian reached for her wine. Renee did not. At 9:06, Damien leaned in toward Amara at the open bar where she had gone to ask for sparkling water. "Listen, I have to tell you something as a friend. I had someone look into your guy. Greystone Advisors, the consulting firm? Amara, it's failing. They've laid off 40% of staff in the last quarter. He's hiding it from you. You deserve more than a man who can't even afford to be honest about his own bank account." She turned away. She did not say what she was thinking, which was, he has never once, in 11 months, lied to me about who he is. He told me there were parts of him I would meet when he was allowed to show me. He told me to trust him. I chose to. And tonight, Damien, I am beginning to understand that the man you are calling a fraud is the most truthful person at this table. What Damien did not know, what no one at the table knew, not even Aunt Vivian, was that Greystone Advisors was a holding shell, and that its sole majority owner was sitting 4 meters from him, drinking water, watching him dig. 9:14 in the evening. The powder room on the 47th floor had 3 mirrors, each framed in brushed brass, and Amara was standing at the middle one when the door opened behind her. Renee Holloway did not wash her hands. She did not pretend to need the room. She came to stand at the mirror beside Amara's, met her eyes in the reflection, and spoke as if she were continuing a sentence Amara had not heard the beginning of. "You think no one can see it? I've watched 4 girls like you make this exact mistake in 20 years. He's using you, sweetheart. The quiet ones always are. He doesn't have the connections. He doesn't have the family. He has you. A pretty black girl with a wealthy aunt and a clean name. Do you have any idea what your mother went through so you could be here tonight?" The mention of her mother lifted Amara's ribs and set them down again on the other side of her chest. She turned to face Renee directly. Not the reflection. The woman. "My mother was 41 when she died. She worked 3 shifts at Brooklyn Methodist so I could finish nursing school. She wore a uniform almost every day of her adult life. She never owned a piece of jewelry that cost more than the rent. And she taught me one thing about people, Mrs. Holloway. She taught me you can always tell the worth of a person by who they bother to be kind to when they think nobody is watching." Renee's mouth opened. Amara was already walking past her. "My boyfriend got down on one knee at a dinner table tonight to clean wine off my dress because a 22-year-old waiter was crying. That is who he is. I do not need you to approve of him. I do not need my aunt to approve of him. And I am done pretending I came here for your permission." She did not slam the door. She did not need to. When she returned to the ballroom, the dessert course was being served, and Aunt Vivian was already standing at the small lectern beside the orchestra, the gold microphone in her hand, the famous Bennett smile arranged carefully over a face that had practiced it since 1987. Friends, patrons, family. The Bennett Arts Foundation has, for 24 years, believed that culture is what separates those who have an eye for the beautiful from those who are merely pretending to belong in beautiful rooms. Her eyes very briefly found Jihoon's table, then moved on. The applause was polite. Amara's hands did not move. And tonight I want to invite a young man very dear to me to come up and share a few words about my late sister, Amara's mother, who would have been so proud to see this gala in her memory. Damien, please. Damien rose. He smoothed his jacket. He walked to the lectern with the easy step of a man who had been told, by his mother, that the night belonged to him. Amara felt Jihoon's hand find her knee beneath the tablecloth, steady, asking nothing. "Thank you, Vivian. Thank you all." Damien's voice was warm, practiced. He had given this kind of toast at 3 Holloway Capital Gala dinners and a fundraising luncheon at the Pierre. "I never had the honor of meeting Mrs. Bennett." But I have known her daughter since we were both children, and I can tell you, Amara is everything her mother dreamed she would be. Brilliant, compassionate, a credit to this family and this community. A soft murmur of approval. He paused. The pause was rehearsed. And I believe deeply that her mother, wherever she is tonight, would want the same thing for her that we all want. A partner worthy of her. A partner who shares her values, her culture, her ambition. A partner who is, honestly, who he claims to be. Not a man hiding behind a borrowed name in a failing firm. Because a mother, any mother, would want her daughter to be loved by a man who has the courage to be seen. The applause that followed was the worst sound Amara had ever heard inside a room of well-dressed people. She felt Jihoon's hand on her knee. Steady, still. He had not moved. She understood in that second that he was not going to move. He had told her in the elevator, "I have not asked you to defend me." He was leaving the choice to her. He was trusting her with it. She rose. She did it slowly. She did it the way she had risen 4 years earlier, the first time a doctor had handed her a clipboard during a code blue, and she had realized that no one else in the room was going to be the nurse if she was not. She placed her napkin beside her plate. She did not look at Aunt Vivian. She walked to the front of the ballroom, took the 3 steps up to the lectern, and held out her hand for the microphone. Damien, for the first time that evening, hesitated. She took the mic from him gently. "Thank you, Damien. I'll take it from here." She turned to face the room. 184 people, 6 chandeliers. A string quartet that had at some point stopped playing without anyone telling them to. My mother's name was Patrice Bennett. She died when I was 11. She was a pediatric nurse at Brooklyn Methodist. She worked nights, like I do. She ate cold sandwiches at 3 in the morning, like I do. And she taught me, that you cannot tell anything important about a person from their suit or their last name, or whether the watch on their wrist cost more than your rent. She found Renee's face in the crowd. She did not look away. I have been at this table tonight for 2 hours. In those 2 hours, the man I love has been called the wrong name 3 times on purpose. He has been mocked. He has been accused of fraud by a guest who did not bother to verify a single sentence before saying it out loud. He has been told, indirectly, in a speech delivered from this podium, that my dead mother would be ashamed of my choices. The room did not breathe. My mother would not be ashamed of me tonight. She would be ashamed of this room. She would be ashamed of an aunt who let it happen, and a family friend who orchestrated it, and a young man who used her memory as a knife. And she would be proud of the man who got down on one knee at that table to make sure a frightened waiter did not lose his job. She lowered the microphone for a moment, lifted it again. I am not asking any of you to apologize. I am telling you that I see you, and I am telling Jihoon that I am sorry. I am sorry that I did not stand up sooner. She set the microphone down on the lectern. She walked back to the table. The silence followed her like a coat. She did not sit, then he rose. Jihoon rose to his feet beside her chair, and the way he rose was not the way a man rises to defend a woman. It was the way a man rises to stand with one. He turned slowly toward Damien, who was still frozen at the lectern. "Mr. Holloway." His voice was quiet. The room had to lean in to hear it. "You mentioned a failing firm. I have a single question for you, and I would like you to answer it carefully. Holloway Capital's Q3 internal communications dated October 14th reported double-digit growth. Holloway Capital's Q3 filing with the SEC dated the same day reported a $47.3 million net loss. Which of those 2 documents, Mr. Holloway, did your mother see?" Damien's mouth opened. The door at the back of the Avalon room opened with it. The clock on the south wall read 9:31. What no one in that room knew yet, not Damien, not Renee, not Aunt Vivian, not even the man at the bar who had been quietly recording the last 40 seconds on his phone, was that the 4 people about to walk through that door had been waiting downstairs in a town car for nearly 3 hours, and that the only person who could have called them up was the man standing beside Amara, holding her hand under the silence. The door at the back of the Avalon room opened, and 4 people walked through it in a single quiet line. The first was a man in his late 50s wearing a charcoal suit, a navy tie, and a silver lapel pin shaped like an unfurled scroll. The second was his wife, in dove gray. The third was a white-haired American man whose face Damien Holloway recognized before his brain finished processing what his eyes were seeing. The fourth was a small Korean man in his 60s carrying a slim leather portfolio under one arm. The string quartet did not start playing again. The lead violinist had set her bow down across her knees, and she was watching the door with the same expression Amara had seen on her own face in the powder room mirror 20 minutes earlier. The expression of a person who has just understood that the night is about to become something they will tell their grandchildren about. The man with the silver lapel pin crossed the ballroom with unhurried steps. He came directly to Jihoon, stopped 2 paces from him, and offered a slight formal bow from the waist. "Director Kang, I apologize for the delay. The Holland Tunnel. Well, you know the Holland Tunnel." Jihoon returned the bow, deeper than he had received it, and answered in Korean. 3 sentences. The consul general laughed softly at the third one. and replied in English, of course, please, introduce me." Ji-hoon turned. He did not let go of Amara's hand. "Ambassador Park, this is Amara Bennett. Amara, this is Park Junho. He is the Consul General of the Republic of Korea in New York. He has been a friend of my father's for 31 years. The ambassador took Amara's hand in both of his. "Miss Bennett, the director has spoken of you. Not often. But when he does, the room becomes quiet and we all listen." Amara did not know how to answer. She nodded once. He nodded back. He understood. It was at that moment that Aunt Vivian, 3 tables away, slowly lowered her wine glass to the table without taking a sip. The white-haired American moved next. He came forward almost at a run for a man his age. His name was Edward Whitlock. He was 73. He was the chairman and CEO of Whitlock Final Group, and his face was the color of paper. "Director Kang, sir, I was not informed you would be attending tonight. If I had known..." "You were not informed, Mr. Whitlock, because I did not wish to be announced." Yes, of course, sir." Whitlock's eyes moved across the Holloway table. He saw Renee. He saw Damien still standing at the lectern with his hand resting on a microphone he had forgotten he was touching. A small, awful understanding moved across his face. He turned back to Ji-hoon. "Sir, the matter we discussed on the 12th, is it public tomorrow morning at 6? "Yes, Director. Please, may I, Edward, sit down, have some water. There is nothing for you to do tonight." Whitlock sat down at the nearest empty chair, which happened to belong to a state senator who had stood up to watch. The small Korean man with the portfolio came forward last. He did not bow. He nodded to Ji-hoon, to Amara, and then, to Amara's surprise, slightly more deeply to her than to him. "Miss Bennett, I am Choi Sung-min. I have served the Kang family for 41 years. I was your grandfather and future's lawyer before I was the director's. Tonight I am simply a witness. I will not be speaking unless I am asked." He stepped back 2 paces and folded his hands. The murmur in the ballroom had begun. It traveled the way fire travels through dry grass, table to table, conversation to conversation, in a low hiss of half-recognized names. Kang, the Kang family. Gangnam Kang? I thought they never let the name appear in the American press. 4 generations. Seoul, Hong Kong, New York. "Edward, what does the boy mean by public tomorrow morning?" A woman at table 9, in pearls, leaned to her husband and whispered 5 words that Amara could not hear but that the husband repeated back to her, slowly, as if to be sure he had heard them right. "The family that does not lose." It was at that point that Damien, still at the lectern, finally spoke. Mom, what is he talking about? What did Whitlock say? What is he talking about?" Renee did not answer him. She was looking at the floor. For a single second, half a second, Damien looked at his mother the way a child looks at a parent who has just told them the family business is gone. Not angry, not even afraid yet, just very, very young. Then his face closed again, and he was 32 and a Wharton MBA, and the moment was over. Mr. Choi opened the portfolio. He did it quietly. He laid 3 documents flat on the nearest empty table. He did not present them. He simply made them visible. Jason spoke. His voice was no louder than it had been all evening. On November 12th, Kang International, through Greystone Advisors and 2 other holding entities, acquired a 51% controlling interest in Whitlock Financial Group. The transaction was confidential until tonight. It becomes public at 6 a.m. Eastern. Holloway Capital is a wholly owned subsidiary of Whitlock Financial. That makes Mr. Damien Holloway, by definition, an employee of an enterprise of which I am the majority shareholder. He has been one for 19 days. A glass somewhere in the back of the room was set down too hard. "Mr. Holloway, your Q3 SEC filing reported a $47.3 million loss. Your internal communication reported growth. One of those documents is a lie. The shareholders of Whitlock Financial, meaning since the 12th, me would like to know which one." A water droplet on the rim of Renee's wine glass refused to fall. Ji-hoon turned away from Damien then. He did not raise his voice. He did not gloat. He did not address Vivian or Renee or any of the 184 faces watching him. He turned to Amara. "What do you want to do?" It was the only thing he had said in 5 minutes that was meant for one person. Amara looked at her aunt. Vivian was not looking back. Vivian was looking down at her own hands the way Amara had seen mothers at Mount Sinai look at their hands after being told there was nothing else to be done. Amara turned back to Ji-hoon. "I want to go home." "All right." He offered his arm. She did not take it. She took his hand instead, the way she had taken it at the table, openly, the way you hold the hand of a person you have chosen on purpose, and they walked together toward the elevator. Mr. Choi followed 3 paces behind them. The ambassador and his wife waited until they had passed, and then took their seats at an empty table, calmly, like guests who had finally arrived for the dinner they had been invited to. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. The doors closed. Inside the elevator, on the way down 47 floors, Amara did not cry. She held his hand. At the 23rd floor, she looked at him and said one quiet sentence. "There is a conversation we are going to have, not tonight, but soon, about what you keep and what I keep and what we are not going to let your name decide for us." He met her eyes. "I know." The elevator reached the lobby at 9:47. What none of the people still seated in the Avalon room understood yet, not Vivian, not Renee, not even Edward Whitlock, who was already beginning to draft an apology in his head, was that the consequences of those 18 seconds in which Ji-hoon Kang had stood up beside the woman he loved would, over the next 90 days, rearrange the careers of 6 people in that room, the funding of the Bennett Arts Foundation, and a 47-year-old private agreement between the Kang family and a Manhattan family no one in that ballroom had yet realized was theirs. The consequences of those 18 seconds did not arrive all at once. They arrived the way water arrives in a basement, slowly, and then all at the same time. On November 22nd, 10 days after the gala, Whitlock Financial announced a restructuring of Holloway Capital. Damian Holloway's role as senior portfolio manager was, in the language of the press release, consolidated into a new oversight structure. He received a severance package of $1,840,000 and a 24-month non-compete agreement that effectively retired him from Manhattan finance at the age of 32. On December 3rd, Renee Holloway was quietly removed from 3 nonprofit boards, including the Lincoln Center Education Council. The notification letters were almost identical. Each used the phrase strategic refresh of the board's composition. None of them used her name on the way out. On January 17th, the Bennett Arts Foundation lost 4 major sponsors in a single week. The largest of them, Whitlock Financial Foundation, withdrew its pledged annual contribution of $2.3 million. Aunt Vivian held an emergency board meeting in the conference room above her late husband's old law office. She did not invite anyone from the Holloway family. On February 9th, Bloomberg ran a long-form investigation into what its reporter called the soft architecture of kingmaking in Manhattan finance and black social circles. Amara's name was not in the piece. Ji-hoon's name appeared exactly once, in a single sentence about Kang International's broader U.S. acquisition strategy. But everyone in those circles read it, and everyone in those circles understood. Amara read none of it. She read patient charts instead. She kept working the night shift at Mount Sinai. She kept eating cold chicken sandwiches at 3 a.m. She kept telling Geraldine, who kept asking, that she was fine, Jerry. I promise I'm fine. In late January, 2 weeks after the foundation's sponsorship collapse, she sat across from Ji-hoon at a small table in her own Astoria kitchen and had the conversation she had told him in the elevator they were going to have. She did not raise her voice once. I want to keep working. I want to keep this apartment. I will not move into your penthouse. I will not take a position at Kang Foundation. I will not be photographed at any of your events for the first year. If your father wants to meet me, he comes here to this kitchen, and he sits at this table, and he eats what I am cooking. If you cannot give me those things, I love you, but we are not going to work. He listened. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he reached into his jacket pocket and put a single folded sheet of paper on the table between them. It was a copy of one paragraph from his late mother's will, translated into English, notarized by Mr. Choi. Do not marry someone only because of their family. Do not refuse someone only because of ours. Min Jung, he looked at Amara across the table. My father did not want me to bring you to the gala. He did not want me to bring you anywhere. He wanted me to marry a woman whose family he already knew. We argued for 3 weeks before that night. My uncle Jun-soo spent 8 years in federal prison in the 1990s. That is the cost we paid to make the family business legitimate, and my father has never let himself forget it. He believes the Kang name still has to be defended. I told him, Amara, I told him, the woman I love does not need the Kang name to be defended. She defends herself. He did not answer me. He still has not. But he sent Mr. Choi to the gala, so I will take that as the first sentence of an answer. She held the paper in her hands for a long time. All right. He comes here. He eats what I'm cooking. We start there. Aunt Vivian came to the apartment on the second Sunday of March. She came alone. She came on the N train, which Amara did not know Vivian had ever taken in her life. She came with a small white box of pastries from a bakery near her old building in Harlem. Not the fashionable one, the original one. The one Amara's mother had taken her to on Saturday mornings when she was small. She set the box on the kitchen counter. She did not sit down. I was 22 when I met a man named Lawrence Whitcomb. His family had money the way the Holloways will never have money. Real money. Old money. I thought I was going to marry him. I thought my whole life was going to be that name. He took me to a dinner at his parents' house in Greenwich, and his mother smiled at me through 3 courses, and at the end she walked me to the door and she said, Vivian, you're a lovely girl, but you are not what we had in mind for our son. Please don't make us have this conversation again. She had not started crying yet. She was getting there. I spent 46 years promising myself that no daughter of my family was ever going to be told something like that. And then I did it to you, Amara. I did it to you in my own ballroom. I did it with my own mouth and Renee Holloway's mouth and Damien's mouth, and I told myself the whole time I was protecting you. She wept. She wept the way Amara had seen mothers weep at Mount Sinai when they finally stopped pretending the news had not arrived. Amara did not interrupt. She did not forgive. She did not refuse. She walked across the kitchen and put her hand on the back of her aunt's shoulder and let her cry. And at one point, Vivian looked up expecting the cold anger she had earned. And what she met instead was an exhausted, steady compassion that emptied her completely. That was the moment Vivian understood her niece had walked past her into a country Vivian could not follow her into. The letter from Damien arrived in April. It was short. The last paragraph was the only one Amara kept. My mother raised me to prove something to a world that once closed a door on her. I thought you were proving the same thing, but you found a way to stop answering that question, Amara, and I have not. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am telling you I see, finally, what you walked away from. I hope someday I learn how. She read it twice. She did not reply. She folded it once. She put it in the bottom drawer of her dresser beside her mother's hospital ID badge, and she closed the drawer. A chapter filed away, not erased. Filed. By late spring, Amara's Bridge Initiative had funded 14 full scholarships for Black pediatric nursing students across 6 public health programs in the Bronx. Amara took no salary from the initiative. The Kang Cultural Heritage Foundation funded it and stayed entirely out of its decisions. Amara picked the recipients herself on her days off, with Geraldine beside her, eating takeout in the conference room at Mount Sinai. On May 14th, at 3:12 in the morning, Amara was standing in room 7 of the pediatric ICU, with her hand on the forehead of a 9-year-old boy named Marcus Reyes, who was not Zoe, whom no one outside that room would ever know the name of, whose fever had just broken for the 3rd time that week. His mother was asleep in the chair beside the bed. Amara did not move her hand for a long time. Outside the window, 47 floors below Manhattan and a long way from any ballroom, the city was doing what it always did at 3 in the morning, which is breathe and continue. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever stood by someone the world had already decided to make smaller? A partner, a friend, a sibling, a child, someone whose worth was not in any of the rooms they were being judged in? And did you stand up? Did you sit there? Did you wait for someone else to do it first? There is no wrong answer. There is only the answer you are still carrying. Tell me in the comments. I read all of them. Tell me where you were and what you did and whether you wish you had done it differently. Tell me about the people who taught you what dignity actually costs. A nurse, a grandmother, a teacher, a stranger on a train. Tell me their names if you can. They deserve to be said out loud somewhere tonight. If this story sat in your chest the way I hoped it would, tap the like button. It is a small thing, but it tells me to keep telling these kinds of stories. The quiet ones, the ones where nobody throws a punch and the harder work happens at a kitchen table afterward. Subscribe if you have not, and turn the bell on because next week I want to tell you about a single mother in Atlanta who refused a settlement she could not afford to refuse and what happened to the man who offered it. Until then, be the one who stands up first. The room will follow. It always does eventually.